Ohio. Hey everyone. Oh, forgot to turn my speakers down, so got a bit of echo there. How's everyone doing tonight? So, I was thinking that doing some streams maybe for recommendations might be a good idea. I'm not going to be going over every anime I've seen in today's theme because I kind of feel like this is a good one for interacting, so people can also recommend their own anime in today's category, and we can discuss as we go through. I did tag this as kind of comedy anime, but really I kind of want to go with anything that's funny, you know. It doesn't necessarily have to be comedy in the style of something like The Disastrous Life of Psyche K, where it's very much a kind of comedy format, but anything where it feels like the humor is a major part of the anime and why it's the way it is. I mean, at the same time, you could say that nearly every anime, with a few exceptions, has some comedy in it. Even Attack on Titan has like an OVA that's kind of funny. So I don't really want to just talk about every single funny moment in everything ever, but things that tend to lean on the side of light-hearted and funny, or, you know, adult and funny, we can talk about that kind of stuff too. But I don't really want to talk about the most well-known shows. So even though the thumbnail for this did have Konosuba, Gintama and Nagatoro on it, I feel like nobody really needs to be recommended those shows. Everyone's aware of them. And I did talk about Konosuba a fair amount last week on the Isekai stream as well, so if I don't start talking about a certain show that seems like it obviously should be counted as one of the best comedy anime, it's probably just that it's that well known, you know. So, I'm going to start with, I've got a list basically of some shows I wanted to recommend. They're kind of a mixture of modern and older shows, but ones that I think may have slipped a lot of people by or are just old, so younger people wouldn't know about them. But as we go through, anything that you recommend, I will try and cover as many as I can. So that's kind of how I'm planning to do it. It's going to be more like a chat stream than anything. But I hope that we'll get some good recommendations. Because to be honest, I could do with some recommendations of some funny stuff too, because the world is kind of sucky at the moment, and really the only thing I'm watching this season that's really, really good is Attack on Titan, which is probably not the most cheerful of shows. So let's see what we can come up with. Ara. Thank you, Garrett Connor. It's nice. I get a little dancing man when you do that super chat. It's cool. And yeah, as you say, just only John, no need to rank and rate, just what made you laugh. Yeah, we won't be doing any kind of ratings or rankings, it's just, if it's funny, we can recommend it. And Nestor Arenas. The first two that come to my mind are The Lovely Complex and Full Metal Panic Fumofu. And that's a good one to start with because I do have Full Metal Panic Fumofu right near the top of my list. If you don't know about this show, it's a spin-off of Full Metal Panic, but it's very, very different from the main story. And I've found that I've rewatched Fumofu so many times compared with the real Full Metal Panic, which I've just watched once, you know, just to see the story. But the Fumofu series, it takes the characters from Full Metal Panic and just dials everything up to 11 and puts them into this kind of like funny high school situation, but with the sort of stoic nature of one of the characters. I don't really want to spoil what it's about if you haven't seen any of it, but just taking that kind of stoicism that plays out well in the normal story and just it turns him into this complete idiot in this high school setting, and it's hilarious and it's really good. And so if you haven't seen it, I don't know if you'd be able to watch it without watching Full Metal Panic. You probably would, but you wouldn't get quite the same humor out of the characters behaving slightly more amplified than they do in the normal series. Last Man Standing says I gotta write this stuff down. Yeah, I'm gonna pin a comment at the end of the stream with a list of all the stuff that we've talked about. So I'm kind of taking notes while we're talking. I've got my own list already, but as we add things, I will put that up at the end, because a lot of these have like Japanese titles. You might not remember how to spell them even if you can remember the name. So okay, Nestor Arena's great. Teacher Onizuka is hilarious too. Yes, that is on my list as well, and I did have to remind myself what the O in GTO stood for. I can never remember his name. But GTO, I think, is probably one of those shows that people would find a bit controversial now, but we don't really care about that here on my channel. So GTO is basically like about a delinquent who becomes a high school teacher, and he actually finds teaching really rewarding and decides he wants to be the best teacher, but his ways of going about it are influenced by his background. So it's very funny, but there are some scenes in it that I think modern audiences may be like, oh my god, you can't show that, you know, because some of the ways he maybe punishes some of the bully kids and stuff. There is a bit actually in Mushoku Tensei that I won't spoil anything because it's something that will be in season 2 of the anime, but there is a bit in Mushoku Tensei that really reminds me of GTO, involving 2 beast girl delinquents that Rudius runs into at school and how he gets them on his side. There's just something very GTO about that. GTO kind of sucked and was super pervy. That's kind of what I mean. I don't think it sucked myself. I thought it was really good, but I think certain modern audiences may be kind of like, it's weird that they put that in, you know, for some of the stuff. Personally, it's not the kind of thing that offends me. I think you can make comedy out of that sort of stuff, but I think other people probably might find it a bit too much in places. But we've got JTrev492 recommending Golden Boy. Yeah, I think maybe that's going a bit beyond what I can talk about in this stream. I've really only seen bits of Golden Boy as memes, or just kind of like looked up clips of it because I think my boyfriend has seen it and he was talking about it and I looked up some of it. But yeah, it's one of those really old ones. I think it's from the 90s. And the animation is very old school, but the comedy in it is definitely also something that wouldn't get made today, but it's pretty funny. Lewd comedy can be enjoyable. Well, if you like lewd comedy, then I think a good recommendation is definitely one that probably a lot of you have heard of, is Shimonetta. Shimonetta is about a kind of dystopian future where like lewd jokes are banned, and so people can never get the like catharsis of making lewd comments or even doing anything remotely like sexual in a comedy way, and the frustration of that kind of makes people react in strange ways. They've kind of like bottled it up, become quite repressed, and this group of people decide to like rebel against that, and the way that they kind of mark themselves out as these like revolutionaries is to put like panties on their faces and wear silly outfits, and just, yeah, there's all kinds of stuff in there. That was a very funny show. So if you don't know about Shimonetta and you like lewd comedy, it does have a lot of ecchi in it. It does have a lot of fan service, and you know, so if you're not interested in that kind of comedy, I wouldn't recommend this one. But for my usual audience, I think most people will probably find something to enjoy about Shimonetta. Let's see, what else have we got here? I watched Shimonetta. I enjoyed it. Yeah, I think a lot of people know about Shimonetta, but it's maybe one that, you know, I mean, I personally slept on it for quite a long time before I got around to watching it. I really hope there's a season 2 though, because the story's actually quite good as well. Let's see. Daily Lives of High School Boys. I haven't actually seen that yet. So, Raphael sorry, I'll try and say your name properly. Raphael Olowatosin Akinola says Daily Lives of High School Boys. That is one I've heard of, but I've never seen it. I'm assuming that's like a high school comedy being called Daily Lives of High School Boys. My guess is that it's going to be about high school boys. I think from what I remember about that one, that's kind of on the kind of more sex comedy kind of jokes kind of end as well. Do you have a little sister is all you need? Is that a comedy? I thought that was kind of like Eromanga Sensei or something. I haven't seen it, no. I have seen Eromanga Sensei. I wouldn't rate that as a comedy, but okay. My Dress Up Darling is good, however, I felt slight overdose of fan service. I like My Dress Up Darling. I feel like it's the hype show of the season that everybody's talking about, and personally I think it's good. I don't think it's as good as Nagatoro or other shows in that kind of genre, especially not when it comes to the comedy. I think maybe a lot of people find the characters a bit more relatable than the characters in Nagatoro or Kaguya-sama, you know, the other popular romantic comedies. But yeah, I think it's good. But like, if you think the first episode didn't even really have any jokes in it until the very end when she reveals where her waifu is from, and that was a good joke, it was funny. But I think it goes more on the kind of slice of life, emotional, cheerful sort of end, rather than the very comedy heavy sort of style of Nagatoro. So for me, I found Nagatoro funnier, but My Dress Up Darling is good though. I can see why people like it so much. What streaming site are you using in Europe besides Crunchyroll and Netflix, as Funimation is still blocking out EU direct access for GDPR avoidance reasons? Well, honestly, I use a VPN if I want to watch stuff that I technically shouldn't be able to access. And, you know, maybe some special streaming sites beyond the ones. I do pay for all of the streaming sites, but sometimes I do end up just watching them on things like 9anime anyway, even though I've paid for the streaming services, just because of things like local issues with blocking. Or with Netflix, sometimes you can actually only watch the show with Italian subtitles in Italy, where I live. And I don't want to watch it with Italian subtitles, I want English subtitles. So sometimes I just end up using the pirate sites. And I think it's kind of, if I'm paying for it anyway, it doesn't really matter. But yeah, I find it difficult because a lot of the time I recommend stuff, or I'm talking about stuff on Twitter, and people say to me, oh, where can I watch this? And I'm like, well, first of all, I'd need to know what country you're in. And second of all, I then need to go and look it up for you. So it's kind of, maybe you could just Google it yourself, you know? That's kind of what I tend to think when people ask me that, because it's unlikely to be the same in my country as where they live. So, you know. Does comedy anime that takes a serious tone in the later half count? Yes. I do have one on this list that definitely falls into that, which is Angel Beats. Like, Angel Beats is not really a comedy. It's, at least not in the second half. But there is an episode of Angel Beats that I think is one of the funniest things I've seen, which is the episode where they kind of have to do everything in high spirits. And for some reason that just cracks me up. And so I don't want to talk about funny anime without mentioning it, because I did find that part of Angel Beats hilarious. And, you know, there's another one where he has to teach someone to do a German suplex. And, you know, I kind of think Angel Beats isn't something you would really recommend because you're going to have a hilarious time watching every episode, because it does have some very emotional moments and some very sad moments. But there are also bits in it that you can tell the point of that episode is just to be funny and to make you feel like the characters are all having fun together. So I think I would say that comedies that don't have to be a comedy in every single episode. I mean, there's even like an episode of Kaguya-sama which isn't particularly joke filled in the second season. So even the comedy animes, there's actually one on this list that I think is quite obscure. I don't know if anybody even has seen it here, which is called Sket Dance. And the reason I wanted to talk about that one is it has actually got a crossover, or 2 episodes I think, with Gintama. I didn't want to talk about Gintama because it's one of the more well-known ones. It's, you know, nobody really needs to listen to a recommendation to know that Gintama exists. But Sket Dance is this kind of like high school comedy that is very much the thing I was just talking about, where there's episodes of it that are not comedy at all. And so it even has that like that format, like something like Psyche K, where each episode is like 3 different sections, 3 different like stories. And you know, they're usually just sort of slice of life comedy about these 3 high school kids that form this club where they like help people out, and they just sort of get involved in all different things. And there is continuity, like, you know, the characters, there's about 70 episodes of it, it's super long. And then for each character, each of the 3 main characters, there's one episode where you get their backstory. And the first one for the girl is not that dark, but the other 2 for the 2 boy characters are just, they're some of the most sad things I've ever seen in anime. And for this, which is very much like 100% a comedy show, to have these bits that make you go, whoa, that is the saddest backstory I've ever heard, you know. There's just something cool about that. So I'm hoping some people will watch Sket Dance from this stream. Categories 1. Excel Saga in Japanese is funny. That voice speed reading the lines. Yeah, Excel Saga is another one I have on my list. That's another fairly old comedy series. Excel Saga, I've only watched it in Japanese, so I don't really know the dub, if that's any good. I can't imagine it would be for some reason. But Excel Saga is very much like referential. When I first started watching it, I hadn't been watching anime for that long. I'd maybe seen 4 or 5 series of anime, and someone recommended to me, watch Excel Saga, it's hilarious. And because I didn't get a lot of the references in it, you know, even things to like basic stuff like Sailor Moon, I wouldn't have got back then. So it was very much kind of like, I don't know if people from other parts of the world get this, but when I was younger and I used to watch like Family Guy, and there's a lot of like references in that to American TV commercials and things like that. And if you're not American, you've never seen the commercials they're referencing, you don't get them. So it just seems like very random, and yet somehow that can actually be funnier. You know, you don't know what it's referencing, so it just seems like some completely out of pocket random thing. And Excel Saga, watching that when I didn't know anything about anime, was kind of that experience. And then when you watch it when you are a bit more entrenched in the whole weeaboo thing, you get what the jokes are referring to. But there's something about Excel Saga, and Excel Saga also has this one special episode that wasn't aired on TV. That is like they're going like over the top episode, and that has, you kind of have to see it, but don't watch it unless you're an adult and okay with very mature content. Let me see what people are saying, because I just talked for ages without looking at what you were all talking about. Philippe Danik, Sleepy Princess is great. Oh yeah, Sleepy Princess is like a nice, wholesome kind of comedy show. I think a lot of the ones I've talked about here are a bit more on the like edgy adult comedy kind of end. Something that's just gonna make you feel calm and happy. Not necessarily like laugh out loud, side-splittingly funny. Just that kind of nice, chill, happy funny. Sleepy Princess in the Demon King's castle. And it has the voice of Rem as the Sleepy Princess. So, you know, that's nice and chill. Though she does do some quite savage things to some of the ghosts. Like the poor little sheep ghost, when she like cuts him with scissors. I felt so bad for that ghost. Bakato Test is also good. I haven't actually seen that. In fact, I don't even know what that is. I'm so useless, sorry. I will add it to the list, because like I said, I was hoping to get some recommendations for my own viewing pleasure from you guys. So, Bakato Test. And yeah, I'm literally writing with a pencil, because I don't seem to have a pen in my house that works. Interspecies Reviewers is straight comedy gold, though it's very controversial for a lot of ecchi, but overall it's a good show with a lot of great jokes that will leave a huge smile on your face. I would definitely agree with that. Like, if you're fine with that kind of comedy, Interspecies Reviewers actually is good at what it does. Like, you know it's going to be the kind of ecchi stuff, and you know it's going to be trashy, but you maybe don't expect that it's going to be actually genuinely funny, but it is. And you know, that's something I would definitely recommend. If you think you'll like it, you'll like it. If you are just like someone who thinks that maybe My Dress Up Darling has too much fan service, then you're not going to like it, probably. Vincent Lee, at least a Shimonetta type of society wouldn't last longer than one generation. Natural selection just filters out that type of society through attrition over time. Yeah, but I mean, if it's your generation, then that's still your whole life that you never get to joke about a chin-chin or whatever. I'm going to go back to my list now, and here's one I'd like to recommend. For something a bit less on the adult sort of edgy end, I think a good show to try is Love, Chunibyo and Other Delusions, because that's more on the romantic comedy end, and so it's, you know, the comedy and romantic comedies usually tends to be a little bit on the milder side compared with, apart from the odd standout one like Kaguya-sama, where it's very much kind of laugh out loud funny jokes all the way through. This one is kind of milder. It's got a lot of drama in it as well, you know, and it has a decent storyline, and but it also has some really funny characters, some really funny moments. And for me, I'm just someone who finds the whole Chunibyo thing hilarious. I love Chuni characters, especially in comedy things. So Love, Chunibyo and Other Delusions has some characters who have just embraced the fact that they're Chuni, other characters who are very embarrassed about the fact they used to be Chuni, and they just kind of come together in interesting ways and kind of navigate their high school lives and romance and all that kind of stuff together. So it's kind of wholesome in that respect, but it's also pretty hilarious. Ali SH. Anyone saw Nambaka? That's really funny. I actually have that on the list too. Nambaka is a series about, if you explain the premise of Nambaka, it's about these guys in prison who are very good at escaping from prison. And it sounds like it's going to be about that, but really it's not really about that. It's just about a load of weird characters being together. And it's hilarious. I find it really funny. It's got a banger of an OP as well. So it's called Nambaka, The Numbers, and that will be on the list that I'll pin at the end. I'm hurt it never got a second season. Yeah, me too. I would love to see more of it. Actually, no, wasn't there 2 seasons? But it didn't get another season anyway. It should have had more seasons. Kid Yami, have you seen Sekirei? I only watched it a few days ago and it's the best ecchi comedy action show I've ever seen. I'm surprised no one talks about it. No, I haven't heard of that one. That's definitely getting written down in my notebook. Sekirei. Urizoe. I think the hard comedy ones like Kaguya or Nichijou are too over the top for me to find them funny. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has their kind of like level of comedy they enjoy. I think with the milder ones where it's a bit more grounded kind of comedy, like something like Love Chunibyo and Other Delusions, you're kind of mostly watching it for the story and characters and more for the drama and romance than for the comedy. Whereas something like Kaguya-sama, you know, you're watching that for the fact that there's good jokes every few seconds, more or less. And for me, I like the stuff that goes all in with the jokes and can get quite, you know, over the top with the comedy. But I think other people maybe prefer the milder, more story-based kind of romantic comedies. And I have things from each. Made in Abyss got dropped before it was finished as well, sadly. Made in Abyss, that's probably the least humorous thing I can think of. I'm assuming you're replying to somebody else's comment there, not recommending Made in Abyss as a comedy. But okay. I think recommending Made in Abyss as a comedy would be a troll move. For anyone who loves Gundam space opera anime, check out Irresponsible Captain Tyler. Okay, I haven't heard of that one either. I'll put that on my list. My Bride is a Mermaid. I haven't heard of that one either. Wow, there's so many that... I think that's the thing when you talk about something as broad as funny anime. You're basically going to find out about new stuff, because it's not like a topic like isekai where you can say only this genre counts and I'm going to make clear definitions of what does and doesn't fit the criteria. But with comedy or with funny anime, you can go right back to... Because I think also animation quality doesn't necessarily matter as much as it does in things like action or isekai or fantasy, where you can cope with sort of janky, low budget 90s anime if it's funny. And so I think even recommending fairly old shows, there's still plenty you can enjoy about them if the acting is good and the jokes are good. But when you get, you know, something more kind of action based, it can look a bit weird to watch now. Urizoe, good jokes is very subjective. Well, of course it is, but I think, you know, if something is intending to be a comedy, then it's got to have something that most people would find to be good jokes, or most people who like the genre of comedy that it is would find to be good jokes. So, you know, you can say you don't necessarily like the comedy in Kaguya-sama, for example, but then you can tell from its success that the people that it's aimed at do find the jokes in it funny. So I think even when something's subjective, you can still kind of say, like, I mean, as an example, stand-up comedy is subjective, but do you know anybody who thinks Amy Schumer is funny? Just Only John. No mention of Odd Taxi. Well, I wasn't going to recommend Odd Taxi as a comedy, just because you know, I mean, it does fit the criteria I'm talking about here, where it's funny. But I tend to think of it more as one of those things that's funny because it has characters who are supposed to be witty characters. And when you have characters who are funny as individuals, who say funny things and, you know, have witty banter between them, it can make the show feel very humorous and funny while not being a funny show at all. And, you know, the story of Odd Taxi certainly doesn't lend itself to situational comedy or whatever. It's quite it's more a mystery story, but it's also quite dark. And I think it's one of those things where it's strange to categorize it. I did say in the video about the Crunchyroll Awards that I felt like it should have been in the drama category, but not necessarily the comedy one, because I think if you say it is a comedy series, it's kind of like, as I said in that video, like saying that Pulp Fiction should be in the same category as Zoolander, because Pulp Fiction has funny dialogue, but it's not really a funny movie, if you know what I mean. But since I did say really anything with a lot of jokes, anything that's kind of heavy on comedy, you know, can be recommended here. There's no reason not to include Odd Taxi, honestly. I just sort of thought about it on my list and yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I think Odd Taxi is worth recommending to anyone under any circumstances, really. But yeah, Odd Taxi on the list now. You've convinced me. Is Hinamatsuri on your list, by the way? I highly recommend it. Yes, it is. Hinamatsuri. When I was thinking about what shows I wanted to recommend in this stream, I remembered Hinamatsuri and I was like, actually, I should have included that as a reverse isekai when I was looking at the isekai stuff last week. Because Hinamatsuri technically is that. I mean, in as much as Dragon Maid is a reverse isekai. Hinamatsuri is about these girls with like psychic powers that end up on Earth and end up associating with kind of this like fairly mid Yakuza guy. And it is actually something with a really nice story as well, but it's like the comedy in it is so, it kind of sneaks in and then just cracks you up. Like there's one episode where someone just out of pocket suggests they go to like a titty bar, and then it just cuts to them all, like including these two like alien kids basically just going, yay, titty bar, and like singing this little song as they walk there. And that shit just cracks me up. Hinamatsuri really needs to get a second season. It was so good. I've never read the manga though. I would like to. When They Cry is definitely a comedy. No, it isn't. Is Star Wars an isekai? No. True Sons of Mandalore, my friend. You always want to talk about Star Wars on my anime channel. Come on. Star Wars isn't an isekai, but you know what is a reverse isekai? The Bible. Redo of Healer is really funny. Yeah, I don't really think that's what they were aiming for with Redo of Healer, but there are certainly bits in it that you can find funny. I don't know if it's been recommended yet, but have you seen Oresaki? It's a knee slapper. Oresaki that's the one where the guy is like friends with the guy who has a harem, right? And he kind of becomes the harem protagonist, but like the premise of it is he's like the friend character in a harem comedy, and it's got like the librarian girl with the glasses and stuff. I seem to remember it being really good, but it kind of ended with no real like conclusion, and there's not really been any sign of a second season of it. But yeah, that's, if you like that kind of high school romantic comedy, that's a good one to watch, Oresaki. Promised Neverland is comedy gold. Yeah, well, season 2, the last episode, that slideshow at the end certainly made me laugh. Onizuka on this list? Yes, I already talked about GTO. I'm afraid you missed that one. But yeah, it's definitely one that I would recommend. Uzaki-chan and Captain Tyler had funny moments indeed. Uzaki-chan was another one like Nagatoro and Konosuba where I felt like people probably already know enough about it for it not really need to be recommended here, but like I like Uzaki-chan. I like everything in that kind of genre where it's like the extroverted girl with the kind of shy, more introverted man. I like that pairing. It's just funny and reminds me of my real life. But let's see. Thoughts on the Ghost Stories dub? Well, the Ghost Stories dub is kind of a meme at this point. I have seen it. It's one of the few dubs I've seen, and I mainly watched it because everyone talks about the Ghost Stories dub. To be honest, I can appreciate that it's better than the original Ghost Stories, but at the same time, it's like when you've watched really good abridged series that people have just made for fun on YouTube, it's still not quite as good as those. You know, like the Ghost Stories dub does a good job of turning a fairly lame anime into a comedy show, but it's not up there with like Sword Art Online abridged or something like that to me. So I kind of think most people like it more as a kind of curiosity than because it's a particularly great example of like, this is hilarious, you know. I think it's probably funnier if you don't know that the dub is different from what they originally were saying. So you kind of think that that's just what the show is. Like Ghost Stories was always like that. But yeah, I think it's something, you know, I can definitely recommend for people to watch, but it kind of, where it's more, it does kind of fall more into like what you would recommend to people who like abridged or whatever than something where it was originally supposed to be the product that we actually get. How about Fooly Cooly? I've never actually seen that. That's one of those shows that's in that kind of, one day I'll get around to watching that kind of category for me. So I can't really say, but I'm assuming you want to recommend that to the stream. So if you haven't heard of Fooly Cooly, or FLCL as it's spelt, then that's one that's being recommended by the chat. Apparently High School DxD counts as a comedy, so I'll recommend it. Yeah, I think most people would count that as a comedy in its own way. You know, I mean, if Interspecies Reviewers is a comedy, then I think High School DxD is in the same sort of spirit. So I think that it can go on a comedy recommendations list. Is The Devil is a Part-Timer on the list? It's not, but only because I feel like I talked about the isekai and isekai adjacent kind of ones enough last week on the stream. So I didn't put them on my list, but I think it's certainly something we can recommend to anyone who hasn't seen it. The Devil is a Part-Timer is awesome. It's really funny. And there's a season 2 coming out sometime this year. I don't think they've announced which season it's going to be yet. Correct me if I'm wrong though, if you have seen a release date for that. And it will be definitely worth rewatching the first season if you haven't watched it yet. And have a look at that when season 2 comes out. I'll definitely be making content about The Devil is a Part-Timer once season 2 comes out, because it is one of the funniest shows in the isekai, reverse isekai type genre to me. Is Noragami on the list? You know, I didn't think of Noragami because, you know, I think of that more as like fantasy, you know, story drama thing. But Noragami is definitely something you could recommend as a funny anime for sure. Noragami is good. I mean, it has funny characters and there are a lot of jokes in it. So yeah, I think it could go on the list here. The Philosophy of Haruhi Suzumiya was a lot of fun. yeah, again, I think I didn't really think of that one when I was making the list because it's more on the kind of deep side in places, and it has some sad bits. But it's definitely a show that if you're looking for something with funny parts, then it would definitely count. So I will add to the list Devil is a Part-Timer, Haruhi, what else are people talking about in my chat? Does Kill the Kill count? Yeah, I think again it's one of those where there's definitely enough of that kind of comedy intention in the show that you could recommend it as something funny for people to watch. I think of it more as an action shonen type thing, but yeah, I mean, we can put Kill the Kill on the final list. Black Butler 2. I haven't actually seen that, but yeah, we can put that in the recommendations. The Devil is a Part-Timer Season 2 comes out July 2022. Oh, so it does have a release date now. I'm going to take your word for that for now. So it looks like there is a release date for that, and it's going to be in the summer season. So yeah, really looking forward to that. Oh, come on, Black Butler is not a comedy. I don't know, I said I haven't seen it. I'm just going with the recommendations people are making if I haven't seen the show. Is Dragon Maid a comedy? Yes, Dragon Maid is definitely one I would put on this list. The only reason I didn't put it on my list is just because I feel like it's one that's so well known, you don't really kind of need to recommend it. Kind of the same as Konosuba, like it's super popular, everybody knows about it even if they haven't watched it, so kind of recommending it is a bit redundant, if you know what I mean. But you know, if people want to talk about it, that's cool. Berk, Ara, thank you, Berk. Duke of Death and his maid is similar to Uzaki and Nagatoro. First episode not so great, but it also gets way better, especially at the end of the season. Also, Ara, lol. Yeah, I'm still doing the Aras, you know. Haven't come up with a new way of thanking the super chats yet, so today it's still Aras. So I've actually kept that up for 3 weeks since you first suggested it. Duke of Death, I did see a few episodes of it, and I definitely get what you mean about the vibe being similar to Uzaki and Nagatoro. I think probably more similar to Nagatoro because she's more on the teasing end. But I think what I liked about the setup of that show was that they kind of like, it's established that they're in love with each other right from the beginning. So there isn't that whole will they, won't they thing, which certainly can add something to a romantic comedy, but just not having it there and having the conflicts be about different things can set up, you know, different comedy scenarios. And I thought that was a kind of interesting direction to go in with it. I haven't finished it. I don't really remember why I dropped it. I think I was just busy that season and didn't get around to picking it back up. But the animation was a bit rubbish, but at the same time it's a comedy, so you know, you can kind of live with that. As I was saying with watching sort of older or lower budget stuff, it's like if it's a comedy you can still enjoy the jokes and the voice acting and all of that. So there's that. And Kaguya season 3 is spring. Yeah, I did know that actually, but I didn't know that The Devil is a Part-Timer Season 2 had been announced for summer. I knew it had been announced for 2022, but I didn't know that the actual date had come out for it. So that's new news for me, and hopefully for some of you. JoJo is comedy. I think, yeah, JoJo it's partly that the show itself is funny, and partly that we kind of make it funny. But the show is funny in a really like meta way. It's like, it's not like it's actually making jokes a lot of the time. It's just that it's funny in that it's so overblown and over the top. And you know, I really love JoJo's, but again, I think it's famous enough that, you know, putting it on a list of recommendations is maybe a bit redundant, but it certainly would deserve to be on here. Just Only John. Ara. Thank you, Just Only John. Sakamoto Deska is hilarious. I'd recommend. That is one I have on my list as well. Sakamoto is... Why are there so few episodes of Sakamoto? It's hilarious. It's one of those like very character focused comedy. It's just like put this character in different situations and he's just himself, and that's where the comedy comes from. So it's more in that kind of short storyline format. And there really should be more of it because it's really funny. But yeah, that was one that was on my list. So it will be on the final list that we get to at the end. Another one I wanted to talk about was I Can't Understand What My Husband Is Saying. I noticed a few people have mentioned it in the chat already. And I Can't Understand What My Husband Is Saying is written by the same mangaka as Dragon Maid and Peach Boy Riverside. But it's very different. It doesn't have any of the fantasy elements. It's very much kind of about a family, really, or a couple, and then more of their family. And it's... If you're fine with the kind of comedy that's in Dragon Maid, then you'll find it hilarious. It's very much comedy for people who understand about otaku culture and want to make jokes about that, you know. So there are things in there that some people would find offensive, but when you kind of, you know, the jokes around these things and how they're kind of joked about in kind of otaku circles, it makes a lot more sense. It doesn't seem like he's just making jokes about shotas and things just for the sake of it. I think Koki Senjai is really funny. He's a really good comedy writer, but you have to kind of get that kind of comedy or not be turned off by that kind of comedy to enjoy it. So for anyone who likes Dragon Maid and, you know, would like something maybe a bit more grounded, but with that same sort of feel to it, then I Can't Understand What My Husband Is Saying is a series with, I can't remember if it's 2 or 3 seasons now, but they're very short episodes. It's like 7-minute episodes, and you can just binge the whole thing in kind of one sitting, and it's really good. So that is one of my recommendations, and I've got a couple of aras to come back and do now. Mega Man Lamb Prime. Ara. Thank you, Mega Man Lamb Prime. Would you count Familiar of Zero as a comedy? Also, let's just add Transformers Beast Wars Japanese dub, because that would be funny. I haven't seen Familiar of Zero. A lot of people were talking about it last week on my stream, so I haven't seen it, so I can't really say. I always get it mixed up in my head with this other one called Grimoire of Zero, which I have seen, which is kind of like a furry guy that makes friends with a witch. It was pretty good, but probably not a comedy. But Familiar of Zero, I can't really say if I rate it as a funny anime recommendation, but since a few people have talked about it, I'm going to put it on the list and people can decide for themselves, I guess. I'm not putting the Transformers Beast Wars Japanese dub though. Ara, thank you, Andrew D. Do not forget School Rumble. I haven't seen that either. So people can maybe throw in some comments on whether they think School Rumble should go on the list. For now, I'll put it on here. Tuaru. Yeah, there's a lot of funny bits in that. That being Tuaru being a certain magical index and a certain scientific railgun series. There is a lot of comedy in that, you're right. I think it's not really the focus of it, but it probably has more of it than the average kind of light novel type series. I mean, when you think about it, you know, ReZero has comedy in it, but you certainly wouldn't go, oh, watch ReZero to cheer yourself up, you know? Whereas I think Toaru, you could certainly recommend that as a funny series. Oh, here's one actually, Mega Man Lamb Prime again, Gabriel Dropout. Actually, you were just agreeing with someone there. So somebody recommended Gabriel Dropout. Oh, it's Berg. Thank you. Yes, because I'd forgotten about Gabriel Dropout, but I would definitely recommend that. That's kind of like, it's a high school slice of life comedy with angels and demons and a very lazy angel who's a dropout. And she's also really cute. There's a lot of moe in it as well. It's good. I like it. Does Kingdom Hearts count as an anime? That's that like game series where there's like anime characters, but also for some reason like Donald Duck, and it looks really confusing and baffling. That thing. Yeah, I'd probably not, no. I only know about it from Zero Punctuation videos. I've never played anything Kingdom Hearts, but I would say that anything that has that much to do with Disney cartoons probably doesn't really count. I hate Power 45. Tsundere are temporary, but kudere are eternal. I really liked Haven't You Heard I'm Sakamoto. Yes, we just talked about that one. That's definitely on the list. Bob Francis 123. I still recommend Miss Kurowitsu of the Monster Development Department this season. It's such a guilty pleasure of mine. A love letter to Sentai and a spoof of corporate culture. I've been watching that. I think it's good. I don't really get the Sentai references because I don't know anything about that kind of genre. But the characters are cute and the story's funny. It's one of the few shows I'm actually watching this season, by way of seasonal anime. I haven't really, other than Attack on Titan and My Dress Up Darling, there's probably not any that I'm like remembering to keep up with every week other than that one. So, you know, if anybody can think of any this season other than Miss Kurowitsu from the Monster Development Department, which will go on the list, to recommend for this season, that would be good. Dog and Scissors. I've never heard of that. Okay, Secretion says, Dog and Scissors was pretty hilarious. Dude ends up reincarnated as a long-haired dachshund and teams up with his favourite slightly psycho waifu author. That sounds amazing. Okay, Dog and Scissors. This better live up to the hype I now have in my head for it, because that sounds awesome. Let's see. School Rumble is gold. So yes, some people are endorsing the recommendation for School Rumble, so that can definitely stay on the list, even though I haven't seen it. A Genius Prince's Guide to Raising the Nation Out of Debt is really funny. I haven't watched any of that yet. I thought it was going to be quite similar to Realist Hero. I think that's probably a pretty common assumption about that show. My boyfriend watched it today, actually, the Genius Prince one, and he said it was good. So I don't know whether it's funny or not, but definitely seems like something I'm going to try watching. Ancient Magus Bride. I don't know that really has anything particularly funny about it. Let's see. Is Grand Blue on the list? A lot of people keep mentioning Grand Blue. I don't even know what that is, I'm afraid. So for now, I'm going to put it on the list. But if it turns out it's one of those troll ones where people are saying like Made in Abyss and stuff like that, then let me know so that I don't look silly when I put the list up at the end of the stream. The Monogatari series has comedy. Everything has comedy elements. As I was saying at the beginning of the stream, you know, there's even a comedy OVA that's spun off of Attack on Titan, which is one of the least comedy series currently airing. You know, everything has some humor in it, because even in real life, you know, the darkest things do sometimes have opportunities for people to make jokes, or, you know, there are always people in your life that are funny and will make jokes. Every story is going to have some elements of comedy. But I think it's more when you think, is it a show that I watch and a reasonable amount of my expectation of the show is that it's going to make me laugh, you know? And I don't think you would say that about something like Demon Slayer, you know? If it makes you laugh, that's a bonus kind of thing. It's not what you watch it for. Same as Attack on Titan or whatever. Whereas something more where the comedy kind of is one of the selling points. So like somebody here saying Mob Psycho 100, I would say that the amount of comedy in Mob Psycho 100 is at the level where it's like part of what you would expect from the show. If it went for like 3 episodes straight without anything funny happening, you'd probably be like, oh, this is a really strange shift in tone. Whereas some other things, you know, like if ReZero went for several episodes without anything funny happening, you'd be like, well, that's about right, you know. So I wouldn't say that Mob Psycho 100 is a comedy, but that's why I wanted the stream to be sort of funny anime rather than this is a comedy, you know, this is anime that you'd put on a comedy anime list, if you know what I mean. It's like things that will cheer you up if you watch them, that will make you laugh. So if you have like One Punch Man and Mob Psycho 100, I think probably One Punch Man is more on the end of comedy than Mob Psycho. But again, it still has, you know, other primary tags to it. You know, One Punch Man, you could say it's just an unconventional battle series or something. But I think if you watch One Punch Man, you're going into it expecting that there's going to be some things in the episode that are going to make you laugh. So yeah, a few people recommending Ground Blue, so I will leave that on the list, even though I don't know anything about it. Mob Psycho 100 is totally a comedy. Well, I mean, if you think of it that way, it doesn't really change whether you enjoy it or not, whether you think of it more as a comedy or more as a kind of a drama or an action show with a lot of comedy in it. I mean, I'm still saying that it should be recommended as something that would make you laugh. I'm just saying that it's not the same thing as when you say, you know, Demon Slayer has some comedy in it, ReZero has some comedy in it, you know, because I think you can say that about literally any show. Like even the darkest ones, even Berserk has some funny moments, you know. And I guess the Berserk anime adaptations from 2016 and 2017, I mean, yeah, there's certainly some funny looking stuff in there. Did you see Daily Lives of High School Boys? That was one that was mentioned earlier, so since there's been a couple of votes for that, even though I haven't seen it, I'm going to add it to the recommendations. Natalie, have you watched Watamote? I haven't, no. Though when I talked about doing this stream on Twitter, it was one a couple of people recommended, so I think it can definitely go on the recommendations list. Haruhi Suzumiya has comedy. Yeah, we've already talked about Haruhi Suzumiya. okay, that's true, but Mob is meant to be quirky and surprising, aka funny, deep in its bones. Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's fine if that's the way that you want to view it. I was saying that I think One Punch Man is more in the direction of comedy as its sole, you know, like, if you were to put it into one genre, I think One Punch Man would fit more easily into comedy than Mob Psycho. But they're both funny, I mean, and they're both clearly intentionally funny, so it's fine for it to be on the list. It's not something I wanted to sort of debate, really. It's just, I personally think that intentions-wise, there's probably Mob Psycho 100 is doing some different things with the plot too that do sort of deviate away from the obviously quirky comedic stuff, whereas One Punch Man really leans into that, you know. They're both awesome, but I think I might be one of the rare people that actually still prefers One Punch Man to Mob Psycho 100 though. I really like them both, but One Punch Man is special to me. I love it. Science fell in love, so I tried to prove it was hilarious to me. I haven't heard of that. But since your recommendations so far, Mega Man Land Prime, have been so spot on, I am going to add it to the list. True Sons of Mandalore Family Guy is a pretty good funny anime. Frank, you're not funny. I hate Power 45, a world where dirty jokes don't exist. Yeah, that's Shimonetta. That's already been discussed and added to the list. Okay, so I'm going to do another one from my list now, which is more on the shonen side, but I think it's really funny anyway. And that's Kenichi, History's Mightiest Disciple. I don't know that it's hugely obscure, but it's kind of been out of the spotlight for a few years, so it's kind of got elements of a sport anime in a way, in the fact that it's about this guy who kind of is useless and lame and gets bullied and stuff, and he decides to take up martial arts. But rather than something like Hajime no Ippo, he has no talent, he has no future as a martial artist, really. He ends up being trained by like the toughest but also quirkiest set of masters who each teach him different styles, but they make him do this really brutal training, and then he ends up in this kind of like long-term fight going through against his against the local delinquent gang, and they all end up, you know, becoming friends over time and all this typical kind of shonen stuff. But the comedy in that show is really good. If you like fighting type series and that kind of comedy where it's, you know, somebody being made to do like the most ridiculous things by way of training and all of that, it's really enjoyable. So if you haven't seen Kenichi, History's Mightiest Disciple, hopefully you'll like that. Star-Lord, Cautious Hero anime. It's a pretty funny isekai. Yes, I mean, I'm happy to add that to the list. I didn't put it on my list because I feel like I talked about every isekai I'd seen in the stream last week, and I thought it might be a bit boring for me to just talk about isekai again. So I'm happy to add people's recommendations for funny isekai, but I didn't put a bunch of them on here, even though there are quite a lot. Have you seen Interviews with Monster Girls? It's a quiet comedy, not one that made my sides hurt, but one that definitely made me smile. I have seen that. Interviews with Monster Girls, also known as Demi-chan, is I did consider putting it on the list because it does have comedy, but I do think of it more as kind of a sort of drama, coming of age type series. I don't know. I'm happy to put it on the list as a recommendation because I think more people should see it. But it was one where I wasn't really sure if it would class as being, particularly funny. Can you say the dojo name from Kenichi? I want a new notification sound. Ryozanpaku. It's a long time since I've seen it, so I can't remember how they actually say it in the show. Ryozanpaku. I don't know. Any scene with Kisara and cats. Yeah. Kenichi, I mean, there's so many good characters in that show. Like, all of the masters are hilarious. I mean, you can't not love Appa. I think, like, Appa, the Muay Thai instructor, is probably just, like, one of the funniest characters I've seen in that kind of show, He's so sweet and like likable, but then he just turns into the god of war, and he's so like strong as a fighter that he may accidentally kill you if he trains with you because he just gets too into it. Have you ever heard of a destructive god sits next to me? No, I haven't. I will add that to the list, and since a couple of you have endorsed it, I'm going to take your word for it that it's an actual comedy. And I'm not falling for that Cory in the house thing, True Sons of Mandalore. You're just here to troll me today, aren't you, Frankie? I heard that people in Chaos Flame are strong, but I wonder if they're stronger than the people in the Shinobi Village. Yeah, that's a ReZero Arc 7 reference and not a funny anime. It was kind of funny listening to JakeSub123 have to say it like a million times when he was doing his summaries of the Arc 7 ReZero chapters. But Takagi-san is kind of fun. I mean, if that's your sort of thing. Takagi-san, I haven't watched it yet, but I'm expecting that I'll probably like it. It seems like the kind of thing I like. So I'll add it to the list. Did you watch Squid Girl? No. Honestly, you should do a stream, Mega Man Lamb Prime, because you seem to know like loads of these good funny shows. Squid Girl. So I'm adding that to the list as well, in case if anybody wants to dispute any of these that other people are suggesting that I haven't seen. I'm just taking a look further up the comments to see what other people have said. Records of Ragnarok is a funny anime, don't change my mind. I mean, probably funny in the same way that like X-Arm is a comedy. Can we get an anime pic of the anime you would be talking about? If not, it's okay. I mean, it would really break up the flow of the stream if I go and search for images while I'm talking, because I wanted to make this something where you can recommend things while I'm talking. Rather than me just having a list and saying these are the 10 shows or whatever. I didn't really want to do anything like that. I will be posting a list at the end of all of the shows that I had on the list I started with and the ones that I'm adding as you bring them up. So at the end of this, in the pinned comment, there will be a full list of all of the shows discussed. But yeah, I can't really go off and find pictures of things as they come up and put them on screen because my brain will not be able to keep talking to you while I do that. It's honestly keeping up with the chat at the same time is quite a lot to ask of my little brain on a Sunday night. Send a hail to Brazilians. Is that an anime, or you just want me to salute my Brazilian viewers? Obrigado, Brazilian viewers. That's literally like the only Portuguese I know, and I probably pronounced it wrong, but I do get quite a lot of comments in Portuguese, because Brazil, in Brazil, anime is a super big deal, and a lot of Brazilian people watch English language Anitubers. So sometimes people leave me comments in Portuguese, and because I can read Italian, and in written form the languages are actually quite similar, I can usually understand what people are saying, but then I have to run them through Google Translate just to check that I'm not just reading them wrong. But it's kind of cool when people leave comments in different languages on the videos, not on the stream when I don't have time to translate them, because they just go over my head. But I'm just going through some comments to see if there are any proper recommendations I haven't talked about. Ghost Stories dub, yeah, we've talked about that one. Magical Shopping Arcade Abinabashi, I remember it coming out. I remember it being coming of age heavy. I don't know anything about that one. Komi Can't Communicate is so much funnier in the manga compared to the anime. I feel like Komi was pretty funny in the anime, but it was more that kind of milder comedy where a lot of it is more about the kind of wholesomeness and the kind of sweet side, rather than being more on the every scene is going towards a punchline kind of thing, like something like Nagatoro does. So I feel like Komi is a lot more sort of low-key on the comedy. It is certainly still a kind of, it's going in the direction of being a romantic comedy, but in the first season at least it's more like a slice of life high school thing. I don't know, I love Komi, but I felt like it might be another one where it was a bit redundant to recommend it, because I think everybody knows about Komi. I hate Power 45. Part English, part Italian, thank God no French. I'm not part Italian or part French. I'm 100% English. I just live in Italy. I have a bit of Italian in me sometimes, as they say, but on that bombshell, I'm going to scroll up a little bit and see if there's any more recommendations. A lot of people still talking about Squid Girl, which I didn't know anything about, so that is going on the list. Squid Girl is the GOAT. Couldn't finish Squid Girl. Starts off funny enough, couldn't keep it up. Sorry, couldn't keep watching. My brain was clearly somewhere else. School Rumble, yes, we've already added that one. Komi is funny, no doubt. That show is building up to its third season when things really pick up. Well, I probably will get around to reading the manga before that, because I do want to read it. I've been so busy trying to read Overlord in my only time I get for reading, which isn't all that much at the moment. So Komi I'm still anime only on, but it is one where I think I'd enjoy the manga. So I'm going to go back to my list for another recommendation. Now here's one for people who maybe are like recommending the isekai type ones. This isn't an isekai, but it's a fantasy series from just last year that I think nobody really talked about. It kind of flew under the radar a bit. So it's one I'd like to recommend. It is, suppose a kid from the last Dungeon Boonies moved to a starter town. And this was one of those shows where I had no real expectations for it. It was on during the same season as like the Hidden Dungeon Only I Can Enter, which to me was one of those like absolute trash shows, kind of like The Strongest Sage with the Weakest Crest this season, like one of those kind of pure trash kind of fantasy shows. And I was expecting Suppose a Kid from The Last Dungeon Boonies Moved to a Starter Town would be something like that. Like, I'd watch a couple of episodes and then maybe decide if I'm going to drop it or kind of hate watch it. But actually, it's really funny, and it really made me laugh a lot. And I think like nobody knew about it, but you know, there were just so many shows last year in that kind of genre that you would probably enjoy it if you gave it a shot, if you like things like, you know, like the first season of Danmachi, which was a lot more sort of comedy oriented than it got later on. You know, that kind of fantasy setting still has a plot, you know, still has a fantasy story, and you know, ends up being, Suppose a Kid is like a parody of all the OP tropes. It was funny. Yeah, I mean, the OP guy just doesn't realise that he's OP. That's the thing, because everyone where he comes from is OP. And so he thinks he's kind of fairly weak and fairly mundane because he wasn't one of the more powerful people in the town he comes from. And then he moves to the typical fantasy village to like go to school and stuff, and obviously he's way stronger than everybody there, and they think he's like the amazing OP hero. And he's very naive. He's really funny, and I think it's definitely one that was underrated, probably just because of when it came out. You know, there were so many competing shows that seemed like the same sort of thing. Let's see what else. Ranking of Kings. I still haven't watched Ranking of Kings, so I can't say how heavy on comedy it is, or, you know, it could be one of those really sad shows where you're saying it's a comedy because you think I'll put it down and nobody will mention it and I'll look bad. I don't know. I really need to watch Ranking of Kings. I know I do, but I just haven't had much time to pick up a whole show that's, you know, at this point got quite a lot of episodes to catch up with. I haven't had time to sit down and do that in the last couple of weeks. So I'm not sure if you're recommending Ranking of Kings as a comedy or just recommending Ranking of Kings in general. I know it's supposed to have a really good story. Whether it also is funny, I don't know if that's part of my expectation for it at all, but we'll see. Last year I enjoyed watching Jahisama Won't Be Discouraged. I dropped it halfway, though I don't know why. I think I just sort of missed a few episodes at the end. I liked Jahi. I thought it was good. I don't really remember like hard dropping it. Like I can't be bothered to watch this anymore. It was more like, you know, when you miss a couple of weeks of something because you didn't really have time to watch it, and then you just never pick it up again. And you sort of think, oh, I'll watch at some point, I'll watch the last few episodes of that. And that's kind of where I am with that. But it was pretty good. Oh, Summer Ranking is not a comedy, it's a drama, 80s style fantasy fairy tale story. Yeah, see, I never got the impression it was a comedy. I just thought, I saw your comment recommending it, and thought you intended to recommend it as a funny anime, you know, for the list that we're making in this stream. But I think you were just replying to someone else and recommending it in general. So I'll definitely take that recommendation on board. I mean, I really need to watch that show because people talk about it so much, and I hear only good things about it. But I think something about the way it looks kind of like put me off at first. I'm not really into that like Ghibli art style, you know, and I kind of whenever I sat down to watch it, something else more typical in the art style kind of caught my eye, and I ended up starting something else instead. And so at this point, it's been a really long time and I still haven't actually got around to starting it, but all I hear about it is how great it is, so definitely need to watch it, but I'm not adding it to the comedy list. Out of a bit older productions, Slayers maybe. Well, I'm always happy to talk about the Slayers. That's like one of my favourite shows of all time, and definitely a funny show. There's a lot of comedy in Slayers. So yeah, I didn't put it on my list because I feel like I talk about Slayers way more than someone whose audience mostly probably wouldn't want to watch 90s anime. Should really talk about it, but the Slayers is going on the list. Great Teacher Onizuka we have already added to the list, so wait, you don't like the Ghibli art style? No, I don't. I'm sorry. I don't like that kind of whimsical, wholesome looking thing. I like more the more modern anime kind of art style that's less kind of cute or pretty. I like the more, you know, moe kind of look. And yeah, that kind of the look that Ranking of Kings had, to me, is like, I'm gonna like the show in spite of the art style rather than I'm gonna like it because of the art style. And that's completely subjective, but it's just one of those things that kind of stands in the way when you're looking to watch a show. If it has a particular art style that you don't really like, it's going to be, you know, getting started with it is going to be less enticing. But once you're into it, it doesn't really matter, you know. Like, I mean, Odd Taxi looked like it was going to be some kind of furry show, and it wasn't. So, you know, looking past the art style there wasn't really a problem. It's like, oh, the story of this is so good, you know. Ranking of Kings is not really Ghibli art style. The art style was chosen by the mangaka specifically because he had no other choice. It's also a web manga. Well, I mean, whatever reason he had for choosing it, you know, that's a choice involved in the style of the show. To me, it doesn't look visually appealing in the way that I tend to find attractive in an anime. That's not to say the art style is not nicely done or competent or anything. It's just a matter of taste. It's, you know. Zombieland Saga and Dragon Goes House Hunting were cute, but I found them funny. I watched like a few episodes of Dragon Goes House Hunting, and it wasn't bad, but like a few episodes was enough, really. I don't think it was like a super amazing show that I'd want to recommend. It's kind of like one of those things where it was airing and you just kind of put it on and watch a little bit of it, but yeah. Spy X Family, that doesn't have an anime yet, right? It's coming out soon, I think, though. I think that's gonna blow up when it does. Beastars is furry, but I watched it and I didn't feel like a furry fan. Yeah, exactly. It's same thing with Odd Taxi. I'm just saying that when something has a particular art style that I don't particularly find appealing, usually it takes me longer to start the show, no matter how highly recommended it is. And the same was true with Beastars. You know, it's kind of like, oh, I don't really like the look of this, the way it looks, as in I don't like the look of the story, but I don't like the way it looks, is less kind of like, you know, it's less easy to just, oh yeah, definitely, I'm hyped to put this new show on. Especially when you have a lot of shows you want to watch. You tend to have a list of things that you want to watch, and then the ones that grab you in the moment tend to be, you know, the ones that you think, yeah, I want to watch that right now. And when they have a look that doesn't visually appeal to you, they tend to stay on the list a little bit longer, if you know what I mean. But once you start watching them, you know, then the appearance doesn't really matter anymore. I just recommend King's Ranking. It has so much complexity that other animes lack, and kind of Disney Pixar plot twists, but those are really good. I don't really watch a lot of Disney, so I don't really know what kind of style of plot twist you're referring to, but you know, you've done enough to convince me to watch it. I mean, it was already on my list. It's just I'm not necessarily. All I said was that I didn't really like the art style. I don't really know why it's kind of turned into a big long thing, but Miss Kuroitsu from the Monster Development Department is pretty funny. Yeah, we've added that to the list already. Angel Densetsu, older series of OVAs, adapted from a manga created by Norihiro Yagi, who created Claymore, classic in the comedy genre. I've never heard of that, but I mean, obviously I definitely wouldn't put Claymore on a list of comedy, but that's not to say that the author isn't capable of writing an awesome comedy series. So that's Angel Densetsu, and that's a series of OVAs. Okay, that sounds very interesting. Next season is Spy X Family. Going a little bit further up, Gintama. Yeah, Gintama is one of the ones I was sort of saying, although it's on the thumbnail. It's not on the list purely because it's so well known and so clearly one of the like iconic comedy anime series that I just feel like recommending it is redundant. But you know, I think Gintama is something that everybody's at least aware exists and has tried. I know it doesn't really, like, it's not everybody's cup of tea, but I think everybody is aware of it and has either tried it and decided they love it or aren't so into it. But I think kind of as a recommendation, it's kind of an unnecessary one for most people. I mean, maybe I'm just sort of overestimating how much people have heard of things, but I think you know, that Gintama is probably one of the first things that comes to mind when you say, you know, funny anime or anime comedy, given how long running it is and how much of a fan base it has. Ali, since you said you liked One Punch Man, did you watch The Misfit of Demon King Academy? It has the same type of comedy. Yeah, I really actually thought The Misfit of Demon King Academy was another show where it seemed like it was going to be really trashy, but it actually, by embracing how trashy it was, it actually turned out pretty good, you know. I found it pretty entertaining. Have you checked these out? Lucky Star, Watamote, It's Not My Fault That I'm Not Popular, Non Biori, Achikochi, Yuru Yuri. I've literally never heard of any of those except Lucky Star and Watamote, and I haven't seen those either. So these are probably going to be things in genres I haven't been keeping an eye on. So let me just get them down on the list. I have heard of Lucky Star and Watamote, but I haven't seen them. Watamote I'd already added for someone else. The music is a bit too loud, is it? Okay, I can turn that down. Unfortunately, when I have my monitor on my headphones, my own voice kind of distracts me in my ear, but then having the music without my voice, it does something weird to my brain anyway, so I am doing this with no monitoring, so I can't hear how loud my voice is compared to the music. So if you let me know, I can always turn the music down. What was I in the middle of doing before I saw that? Okay, I was adding It's Not My Fault That I'm Not Popular, Non Biori. Achikochi, and Yuru Yuri. These all have this like format to how the titles are that makes me almost feel like they're supposed to be part of a set or something. Do you like Psyche K? Yes, Disastrous Life of Psyche K is probably one of my like favorite pure comedy animes. You know, like it's just a comedy. You're just gonna watch Psyche K just to laugh, and you know, it's a high school slice of life. It's done in those kind of short episodic episodes, but it also just has the completely OP fantasy stuff as well, where he can just sort of get out of any situation using psychic powers, but he just wants to live a normal life, and it's the kind of the situational comedy that comes out of that and all the quirky people that he knows. And it has the tsundere grandfather, which is, I think, the best tsundere in any anime ever, because you don't expect a grandfather to be a tsundere, and yet he is so very much the tsundere grandfather. More recommendations for Grand Blue. Okay, yeah, there's definitely a lot of recommendations for that. Okay, so I'm thinking, since a lot of people are saying goodbye at this point, it is apparently getting late. Depends what part of the world we're in. For me, it is now like 9:30, so I've been on for an hour and a half. My voice is getting a bit tired, so I think we'll probably keep this going for maybe 5 more minutes, a couple more recommendations, and then I will leave you to enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will put together this list that we've discussed and put it in the comments. So we have a recommendation here for Beelzebub, and that was actually one that was on my original list. Beelzebub is it's got several elements in it that I personally just find really funny. Like, I have a thing for delinquents in comedy. I like the like Yankee type delinquent characters in sort of older anime, and this is like a character like that, like a high school delinquent, and he goes to like the worst school, you know, where everybody's always fighting and in gangs and stuff like that, and he has to adopt a baby that's the son of Satan, and he just kind of has this baby. He goes around with this baby, and the baby is Satan, and he gets like this maid that works for the devil, who is like supposed to keep an eye on him while he's looking after the baby. And yeah, I mean, it's just like the premise of it is so ridiculous, but the actual the comedy in it is really good. The characters are really funny, and there's just something about that like delinquent comedy that you used to get. You don't really see it so much now. Someone saying great teacher Onizuka might be the thing for you. Well, yeah, I already added GTO to the list earlier, but it's that kind of thing, you know, stuff with those kinds of characters I find really funny, and I just wish there was more of that, you know. I think it was like a genre that came and went, the delinquent genre, but the comedies from that kind of style to me are awesome, so I like it a lot. And one more that I would like to recommend before I go. Sorry, I just need to answer a couple of questions before I do that. Yankee type delinquent, what the fuck is that? British slang? No, it's Japanese slang. They call a certain type of like gang style member that would have a very like kind of 1950s American inspired look to them. They're called like Yankee in Japan, and that's kind of like in the older shows you would get these like, oh, this character is a Yankee, and that's a type of delinquent teenager character. So it's not British slang. Why would British people call delinquents Yankees? That doesn't, yeah. It's a Japanese thing. I was about to recommend the final show that I had on the list, which was Way of the House Husband. This, it has very limited animation. So I think a lot of people who liked the manga were disappointed in the anime because it has this, almost to the point where you could watch certain manga dub videos on YouTube where they slightly animate the manga panels and it would almost be the same level of animation. But it actually works, for me at least, the way this show's made, because the voice acting is really good. And there's something about kind of just seeing the facial expressions sort of frozen in this kind of comedy show it's about a Yakuza, like a feared Yakuza who was like important in the Yakuza world, who gives it all up and becomes like a house husband. He gets really into like cleaning and cooking and things. And he's still got his connections who are kind of disappointed that he's left the Yakuza world. And he tries to be like a helpful member of the community, and he like makes friends with, you know, like the stay-at-home moms and all that from his neighborhood. And he ends up doing things like reading to small children at the library, but he can't help but make the stories into like these like gruesome versions involving like gangster stuff. It's really funny, and don't be put off by the limited animation, because the voice acting and the stylization of the way it's animated do still make the comedy be conveyed even better than the manga. So, you know, even though it does look like a slideshow, I think it actually works. And yeah, I mean, you could just read the manga, but I think the voice acting is high enough quality to add something special to the characters and all of that. So, you know, because a lot of comedy is in the delivery, and I think, you know, having the right voices and the right timing for some of the lines in that show really make it kind of better than just reading the manga. The Sleeping Princess in the Demon Lord's Castle. Yep, we already mentioned that one. That's going on the list. Kisnaiva is about a group of teens who are connected through pain and emotions for an experiment for world peace. I mean, that sounds kind of sad, but I haven't heard of it. But if that's a comedy, then I'm happy to add it. Voice acting in The Way of the House Husband is amazing. Yeah, it really is. It definitely adds something. For me at the moment, you know, like, although I was saying I like the delinquent stuff from back in the day, I also like, I mean, like the Yakuza stuff tends to be more like the grown-up version of the delinquent tropes. And because I'm playing the Yakuza games at the moment and have been for the last like 2 years, I'm still on Yakuza 5. Because I started with 0 and I'm like working my way through them, but they take a lot of time, so I'm playing that, and so it's really fun to see those kinds of characters in comedy situations. But sorry, my throat is getting really dry, so I'm definitely going to have to go in a minute. I'm just going to read a few more of your comments. Chromati High School. I haven't heard of that, but I've noticed a few people mentioning it, talking about delinquent shows. So I will add it to my list, because I'm always up for more delinquent shows. Amagiri Brilliant Park. I haven't seen that either. Isn't it Amagi Brilliant Park though? It's one I've heard of, but I don't know anything about it. So I am happy to add it. Drifters. Drifters came up quite a lot of times last week when I was doing the isekai tier list, because it was one of the few isekai I hadn't seen. So I still haven't seen Drifters. I didn't know it was supposed to be particularly comedic, but you know, I can take your word for that because I haven't seen it myself yet. Sorry, just having a quick scroll through. Apologies for not being able to mention every show that people have mentioned throughout the stream. You know, I'm trying to keep up, but also not just be reading out chats and not saying anything else. So if I haven't mentioned yours, then do feel free to leave more recommendations in the comments. Nekarivis, have you talked about Bakato test? I just joined a few minutes ago. We did talk about it. I haven't seen it, so I wasn't really able to discuss the show at all. But I have added it to the final list from this stream that I'm going to put in the pinned comment. So it's definitely one I'm taking as a recommendation. Although it's not one I can give myself as a recommendation because I haven't seen it. Goku-sen, female teacher that lives with her grandfather, Yakuza patriarch, becomes a teacher for a rowdy school. It has live action, anime, and manga. That sounds good. This kind of sounds like a female version of GTO. Goku-sen. Have you talked about A Little Sister's All You Need? Only to say that I haven't seen it and didn't realize it was supposed to be a comedy. I thought it was supposed to be some kind of like Eromanga Sensei type thing. But maybe I'm getting it confused with something else. I don't know, because there's quite a lot of Emoto shows, so maybe I'm just assuming they're all like Eromanga Sensei and they're not, but because I felt like Eromanga Sensei wasn't really heavy on comedy. At least, well, maybe it tried to be, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it worked for some people. Drifters is Fate on steroids. Now that's a recommendation. But seriously, I've heard nothing but good things about Drifters, and a lot of people have said to me where I said last week that it was one of the few isekai that I hadn't watched. It's definitely one that's been on my to-watch list for quite a long time. But again, I wasn't expecting it to come up as a recommendation of a funny anime, but you know, I'm happy to hear that it has comedy as well, because it's definitely one I'm going to have to watch. Have you talked about Love Tyrant? No, I haven't. That's another one I don't really know much about. I have heard of it, but happy to add it. Love Tyrant. I've watched all recommended shows here. Shall I become an Anituber? By all means. It's yeah, I think if you've watched a lot of anime, it certainly helps, because you know, you have more things to draw on to talk about. But I don't know that that's the only thing required to be an Anituber, but you know, give it a try if you want to. Drifters has amazing action scenes. Yeah, there's a lot of recommendations for Drifters. I was, you know, I mean, like I was saying, I did hear a lot of reasons why Drifters was recommended in the Isekai stream. I wasn't expecting it to come up so much here, but that's interesting to know that it's also heavy on the funnies. So I look forward to that. 86. I don't think I would say 86 has very much comedy in it. My name is Not Earl. You've brought up Hinamatsuri, right? Yes, that was one that was discussed a bit earlier. It's definitely one I would put very high on this list of recommendations. Hinamatsuri is awesome. +1 for Fumofu. Yeah, Fumofu is awesome. And Detroit Metal City is the funniest shit I've seen. I don't know about Detroit Metal City. Detroit Metal City. Gonna be a twin tale because it's a ridiculous concept and story. Again, that's not one I know anything about. If you want to go old school, Urusei Yatsura and Ranma Half are both very funny. I mean, those are kind of classics. I think, again, that they're well known enough that it becomes a bit redundant to recommend them to people, you know. It's another reason why I'm not recommending the really famous things from recent times, like Konosuba. Just because I think everybody's aware that things like Urusei Yatsura exist, but I've never actually watched it though. Ali, unrelated question, but do you have a Discord server? I do have a Discord server, but I'm hardly ever on it, so I haven't been pushing it very much lately. It's something I'm hoping to relaunch soon. I just haven't really come up with a plan for how I'm gonna, you know, do that, because initially it was invitation only, because it was created sort of last summer by someone in my community, and it wasn't, you know, I didn't make it myself. Originally I didn't really want to have a Discord server because I felt like it would take too much time away from actually working to just be, because I'm really easy to distract. I will start just chatting on there for hours a day and not get on with writing my videos and making content and all of that. So I do feel like enough people have asked for it and enough people want it that I should be doing something like with the Discord server, but I have to really plan how I'm going to prepare for, you know, making it no longer invitation only so people can all join it without having to like DM me on Twitter and things like that. And so it's kind of like it's an upcoming thing. I will definitely commit more time to it soon, but for now I wanted, you know, my goal for the start of this year was to get into doing streaming a bit more regularly and, you know, come up with topics for streams that I thought people would be interested in. So I'm not just doing readings, which was originally something I was going to do on the streams. The next one of those I'm going to do is from a chapter of Mushoku Tensei that I feel would be better to do after the OVA comes out, that's coming out soon. So rather than doing readings, I wanted to do these more kind of chat streams, tier lists, that kind of thing. And as I get more comfortable with doing the regular streams, then I think, you know, it'll make more sense to be spending time on Discord to get people's ideas for those kind of more interactive things. But I've got to work on the more scripted videos during the week, so it's, you know, I get distracted if I just go on Discord and chat to people. Twitter I spend enough time on as well as it is. I'm really bad for just, if any of you follow me on Twitter, you probably noticed that I reply to everyone. And I do it on my comments as well. I usually reply to everything, which most YouTubers, at least at this point, you know, because I now get hundreds of comments on every video, at this point don't reply to that many of them, but I've always replied to a lot of them and got into conversations with people all the time, and it becomes quite demanding of your time if you're someone who is easily distracted and who is also, you know, likes that side of it, likes chatting to people and likes interacting all the time. So I end up doing almost nothing else if I'm tempted to be chatting too much, which is why I kind of have this thing where I don't really reply to DMs unless it's from people I know or it's a specific request. You know, if someone DMs me about something particular, then I'll usually reply. But I think if when I get DMs on Twitter or Discord from people just sort of wanting to start a conversation, I feel bad about it, but I know that when I have done it, just got talking to someone, that's usually my whole morning gone then, or my whole afternoon gone when I should have been working, and I feel really guilty and procrastinate. So I do reply on public things like Twitter and my comment sections, but I think once I get into things like Discord or talking to people individually, it starts to get quite intense, because people often just want to ask you things that are really easy to get into a conversation about, yet all the time I spend talking to just one person about, I don't know, what my favourite character from some series is or something, is time I'm not spending working. And because I'm so easily distracted, I kind of have to find the balance there. I don't think replying to that many comments is healthy. I know, but it's kind of also something that people sort of expect from me at this point, because I've always done it. And as my channel gets bigger, I think you can kind of tell when you read the comments on my videos. They're usually people trying to talk directly to me rather than to talk to each other in the comments. Whereas on other channels that don't, typically reply to people as much, the comments are more tend to be talking to the reader or talking to the other people in the comments. So I kind of feel like people use it as a way to talk to me directly, and I would obviously, if someone asks me a direct question or something like that, I feel like rude or wrong to not reply to them. Or if they say something that's just interesting and I want to reply to it, then I do it. So it's yeah, I mean, I like interacting with people. I am more on the sort of extroverted end of people, so it is a part of this job that I really like, is just being able to talk to everybody, even people that don't agree with me or want to argue with me about how my opinions about that time I got reincarnated as a slime are completely wrong, and things like that. I actually enjoy talking to people and all of that, and having a platform of any size means that you get to do that more. It's one of the reasons I prefer this to my old job of writing novels, because you don't get as much feedback. You get the odd, people on Twitter will talk to you sometimes, you get the odd email from someone or whatever when you're an author. But when you're a YouTuber, and especially when you stream, and when you're also on Twitter a lot, you get to interact with people so much. And because that's something I like, it's also something I have to be conscious of not doing more than I realistically have time to. So yeah, that's the whole long spiel about why the Discord server is not a thing I'm pushing at the moment. It is something I will be pushing. It is something that I will be making available to anyone who wants to go on it. But I need to really think about how I'm going to manage that once it has a big influx of people on it, and just to set expectations about how much it's going to be the community talking amongst themselves and how much I'm going to be on there. So Are you planning to do any readings of the ReZero ifs? Also, what's your favourite if story? I would like to do readings of the ReZero ifs. I think if I do them, though, I'll probably do them as pre-recorded readings, like I've done with the Old Dragon's Tale and things like that, just because they're a bit too long to do in a one-shot thing in a stream. Although I can keep talking for hours, as I did last week, and looks like I'm going to end up doing this week as well. That kind of particular way of talking when you're narrating, after maybe 30-40 minutes, it gets a bit tough doing it live, because you can't just stop and drink, and you can't do retakes when you start to mess up words and stuff. So for the live ones, I prefer to keep it to shorter stories, things that are maybe just one chapter ish in length. The ifs are mostly around 4 times the length of a normal chapter, so I think it would be better to do them as pre-recorded videos. But again, the readings are something that it seems like my audience or at least a portion of my audience really like. But for me, they're kind of bonus content that I just do because people like them, and because it's content I can make without having to spend days writing a big essay or a big analysis or something like that. And so it's kind of, people seem to really want me to do more of them all the time. I think there are a lot of people that would like me to just do nothing but those kind of readings and audiobook type things. But, you know, I mean, I started out as a writer. I don't really want to be just a voice narrating things that other people would like there to be an audiobook of, but there isn't, you know. So it's kind of like, it's content that I enjoy doing, but it doesn't really benefit my channel all that much to do. So it's kind of finding that balance between doing it for the people that like them and doing it just, you know, people can get a bit demanding about it, I've found, you know. The amount of people who ask me why I don't read out the entire series of Mushoku Tensei, it's like, well, it's 2.5 million words long, you know, and I'm not getting paid very much to do it, so how about no? But yeah, I'll stop ranting now. This was supposed to be happy recommendations. You are good at ranting, I like it. Thank you, Atom Saber. Jockweeb Harika-chan. Hello, my friend. We haven't spoken for ages. Oh hey, you're live. Watch Gokujo. It's terrible. I love it. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to add it to the list because I trust you not to be recommending something that isn't a comedy. It's like recommending like Now and Then, Here and There or something as best comedy. Shimonetta is god-tiered to Jen. Yeah, Shimonetta was one of the first ones to go on the list. So when the stream is over and I'm putting everything into the pinned comment at the top, then, you know, get a contract with Audible and then you'll do Mushoku Tensei novels. The thing is, though, the way that those audiobook things are actually done is something I've looked into in the past, because originally I was going to do audiobooks of my own novels, just because it's a skill I already had. I had done some training for radio and things like that to do proper narration, and I was going to do them for my own novels, but it's incredibly hard work actually to do full time. When I do just the odd chapter, it takes me, 20-40 minutes to record all of that, and being really careful with the enunciation and all of that. It's not the same as where I'm just talking casually now. I have to be very careful with the way I speak, and sometimes do some funny voices here and there, or give different characters different voices. And it's something that I can do for an hour or so if I need to, but it's not something I would want to do as a full-time job. And also, when you do it for a job, you don't get to choose which novels you read. I mean, like I said, I was originally only planning to do my own novels, and in the end, even that was more than I really wanted to do. And at least with my novels, nobody's going to be telling me, oh, I imagine that character to sound this way or whatever, because I invented the character, so if I say they sound like this, they sound like this, Whereas when you're doing it for another author, they can always be saying, well, no, I wanted this character to have an Australian accent or something, And not having anyone really telling me what to do, because they were my own books, I thought I would find that to be decent enough, but it was still more than I wanted to be doing, because if you do like audiobook narration for a job, you basically have to build your whole lifestyle around always having your voice being fresh. You can't go out you can't go out anywhere loud, because when you're talking loudly over music or whatever to your friends, wears your voice out. You have to like always be drinking things with honey, and I hate honey. And all of that kind of stuff. And I just don't really want to do that for a job. And yeah, I'm sure if I got a deal to read Mushoku Tensei or something, I probably would, because it's a novel that I love. But if it was just like my job to read whatever people told me to, I would hate that, I think. So although I do a bit of voice acting on the side, but it's all sort of character stuff, just doing some lines here and there for people's animations or games or whatever. And that's a lot less demanding because you're actually acting rather than narrating. So yeah, I really don't want to read Mushoku Tensei all the way through just as a YouTuber. If I was hired to do it, then I would consider it for that series, but I definitely don't want to become a professional audiobook reader. And I don't think they would hire me for Mushoku Tensei anyway, because it's mostly written in the first person and the main character is a man, so typically you would hire a man to read that. Just going to answer a couple more questions. What's your favourite redundancy chapter from Jobless Reincarnation? Mine is the family vacation to Milishon. It has some very funny parts. That is true. That is a good chapter. But I think my favourite is still the final one, the last one to leave the nest. I really, really like Christina. I think that her story is really fun. And I mean, a lot of people really like the ending of that chapter too, because it's kind of the ending of everything, really. But the Christina part as well, I just thought was a really good story. Last of my questions. Did you already watch How a Realist Hero Rebuilt the Kingdom? I started it. I didn't drop it, but I got behind on it and just haven't caught up yet. So I'm really behind on it. Because you know when you get behind on stuff, sometimes it just like racks up. You're like, well, I haven't watched it for 3 weeks. I might as well just wait now and binge it. So it is one I'm planning to catch up on very soon. Where can I read your novels? I don't recommend my novels on my YouTube channel because they are not safe for work. So, but the novels I've written under the name Natalie Hunter, at least. I've written various novels under various names, some of them for publishers, some of them self-published. I'm really not willing to promote any of them on here because some of them just aren't connected to the brand that I have as an Anituber. You know, I've written some cheesy romance novels and things because I was paid to write them, and the ones I've written under this pen name are more isekai type stuff, but harem focused, and they are adult content. So I don't want to recommend them when I know that my YouTube audience is very mixed in age, and I don't want there to be like some scandal that I'm promoting those kind of books that I wrote myself, you know, rather than promoting some ecchi series or whatever. I don't really want there to be like some I was promoting that to teenagers kind of thing. But you know what my name is, you know the place where most books are sold. You can probably find them, if you know what I mean. And oh yeah, what's your favorite ReZero if? I don't know, people ask me this all the time and my answer tends to be different each time because it's usually whichever one I've been thinking about the most lately, whether it's for a video or just because it's the one I reread the most or got into a conversation about the most. I can definitely tell you my least favourite one, not counting the Lust if, which I just think nobody takes seriously, or the School if, which is kind of a strange one that's off on its own. Of the other four, my least favourite is the Rem if. I don't really like that, or Sloth as it's also known. My favourites are the other four basically, and it kind of changes between them. So Wrath, Pride, Gluttony and Greed, and it kind of switches between them depending which one I've been kind of invested in the most at the time, because they're all really interesting but for completely different reasons, and they all have their own kind of vibe, but they're definitely the darker ones. The less dark ones don't really appeal to me as much, because I think I just never really questioned the what if situation of it not being the darker, more terrible timeline, if you know what I mean. If it's not like some kind of ReZero equivalent to the oldest route in Mushoku Tensei, is it even an if, you know? So I think probably the one that ends up being top of the list most often for me is Ayamatsu, Pride. But all of Pride, Gluttony, Greed and Wrath all have their times when they're my favourite, if you know what I mean. Out with the children, then you can recommend your steamy romance novels. Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't mind if teenagers want to watch my streams, you know. I don't really even, to be honest, care if teenagers want to read my books. I just don't want to be known for promoting that they do, if you know what I mean. There have been authors that have been cancelled just for, you know, having those kind of scenes in their lit RPG type books and things like that, and then, you know, promoting them to young adult audiences. And it is what it is, you know. I also think that given I've written those kind of harem isekai type books, that there's certainly things that do overlap with what I talk about on my channel. Obviously, I mean, I've even done reviews of JAVs on here. It's not like I'm trying to deny that I know anything about the cultured materials or anything. It's also just that I don't want people thinking, well, you wrote this, so, you know, you wrote this book with all these sex scenes in, so, you know, obviously you can't have an intelligent opinion about anything. You know how people are. Since we're off topic, do you recommend any Anitubers to watch? I tend to, you know, skirt around this topic, because realistically I'm just going to recommend my friends, and, you know, it just seems a bit unfair to do that. So I find that since I've had my own channel, I tend to mainly only watch the really big ones that I was already either a fan of or just to see what they're doing, and people I know, because there just isn't time to watch everybody. And I also watch a lot of I can't speak anymore. I also watch a lot of content about other things, you know. I watch content about gaming quite a lot. I watch content about weightlifting and other things, martial arts and things that I'm interested in. So I'm not constantly watching Anitubers, and, you know, I don't really want to just be like, these are all my friends, so go and watch them, because I do mention the people I know quite a lot. So, you know, it's not like people don't know who I recommend. Jockweeb Haruka-chan, you recommend me, right? Yes, I do. I definitely recommend you check out Haruka, the Jockweeb, who is a kind of a channel that overlaps sport and anime in interesting ways. We were going to do a collaboration last summer, but we kind of I kind of didn't manage to get the video part recorded in time, so we ended up kind of ditching that idea, and we'll probably do something else in the future. But for now, yes, you can check out Haruka's channel, Jockweeb Haruka. There is only one Anituber to watch for me, and that's Natalie X Hunter. Thank you very much, Heavy Elite. I really appreciate the support, you know. Have you watched Dress Up Darling? It's a 2022 anime. So good. Watch it. Yeah, that was one we did talk about earlier on in the stream. It's a good series. Do you think the main timeline of ReZero might be the MV-IF timeline of sorts? I think that Tappei has said that it would be called the MV route, the main route. But, you know, I would guess that that's... He's kind of like... He goes more kind of conceptual with, you know, how the sins relate to the Ifrits. I mean, like, the Wrath If doesn't really have anything to do with the Sin Archbishop of Wrath or the Witch of Wrath. It's just Wrath as a flaw in Subaru that he doesn't overcome in that loop. So, you know. Okay, now people are telling me to stop the stream or I'll get a sour voice. Actually, yeah, my throat is getting really sore. So I probably should go. But thank you for listening to me ramble on about random topics after the recommendations there. And I will be putting together the list of all of the comedy anime and funny anime that we talked about. So I will pin that when I've had time to type it up. As for that, thank you everybody for coming tonight. Well, or this afternoon, whatever time zone you're in. And thank you for coming out for me again this evening. And I will try and think of another good topic for us to discuss in my next stream. But I think maybe it will be another tier list or something like that. I don't know. You should do a stream about ReZero theories sometime. Maybe that would be a good one to do, you know? Maybe like an iceberg stream or something. We'll see. Okay, thank you very much for your time. And I hope you had a good afternoon or evening, whatever you were doing while you were listening to me in the background. Good night.